Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eva Abramiuk-Lety. I'm General Manager of Liquid Gas Europe, and alongside Leonard Wusner, Senior Policy Officer, I'll be hosting today's webinar. I want to personally welcome you to today's event and thank you for taking your time to listen about the State of the Union, what's happening in Brussels, and how the energy, climate, and transport policy impacts the liquid gas industry. The webinar will consist of a presentation and followed by a Q&A. You can post your questions at any time via the chat function, and we will address them during the Q&A session. Liquid Gas Europe is a non-profit association representing the voice of the European liquid gas industry in Brussels. Associations like Liquid Gas Europe play a pivotal role in Brussels by serving as a voice of their industries, advocating for balanced and effective policies at the EU level. They act as bridges between policymakers, industry stakeholders, offering expertise, data, and insights to inform legislation that supports innovation, sustainability, and economic growth. Liquid Gas Europe ensures that contributions of renewable liquid gases to the energy transition are recognized, fostering dialogue on critical issues such as decarbonization and energy security. Through collaboration and knowledge sharing, we continue to shape a resilient and forward-looking European policy landscape. As Liquid Gas Europe, key areas of our work are actually reflected by the applications of liquid gases. So let me go very quickly through how and where liquid gases are used. First of all, they are used in rural and off-grid areas where they provide essential energy for heating, cooking, hot water, offering a reliable alternative to electricity. They are used by businesses, including restaurants and hotels, which use liquid gases for cooking, heating, and hot water, ensuring consistent energy supply even in remote locations. Industries depend on liquid gases for processes like space and process heating, welding, machinery operation, and food production, benefiting from their portability and high energy efficiency. Farmers utilize liquid gases for crop drying, heating greenhouses, and powering irrigation pumps, contributing to efficient and sustainable agricultural practices. Autogas, a form of LPG, fuels over 8.5 million vehicles in the EU, offering a cleaner alternative to conventional fuels and reducing emissions. In areas without access to natural gas grid, liquid gases serves as a dependable energy source for various applications, ensuring energy security and flexibility. Over the five past years, European policy has been increasingly centered on decarbonization and transitioning to renewable energy sources. Initiatives such as the European Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package have defined the EU climate agenda with very ambitious targets. What is Fit for 55? The Fit for 55 package represents the European Union detailed roadmap to achieving a 55% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, serving as a milestone towards climate neutrality by 2050. This comprehensive policy framework includes market mechanism, expanding the EU emission trading system to include sectors like road transport and buildings, alongside the carbon border adjustment mechanism to ensure fair competition and reduce carbon leakage. Renewable energy efficiency targets, setting a 40% target for renewables in the energy mix and a 36% reduction in energy consumption by 2030. Regulatory measures, phasing out fossil fuels in the heating system and banning the sales of new internal combustion engine vehicles by 2035. Support mechanism, introducing the Social Climate Fund to alleviate the socioeconomic impact, the transition on vulnerable population. Liquid gas industry response to 55. We have been proactively aligning with the EU climate goals outlined in the Fit for 55 package. Through technological innovation, renewable fuel adoption, and targeted policy advocacy, the industry supports a just and inclusive energy transition. Renewable alternatives such as bio-LPG and renewable DME provide practical drop-in solutions that leverage existing infrastructure to support decarbonization, ensuring cost-effective and reliable energy solutions for heating, transport, and industrial applications. The industry also advocates for a technology-neutral approach to decarbonization, fair taxation policies, and recognitions of the critical role renewable liquid gases play in serving rural and off-grid communities. By addressing these challenges and opportunities, the liquid gas industry emphasizes its role in enabling a balanced, affordable, and equitable energy transition while actively contributing to the EU ambitious climate targets. What is bio-LPG? Bio-LPG is a renewable alternative to conventional LPG. It's a drop-in fuel produced from sustainable feedstocks such as plant and animal waste, vegetable oils, and biogas. It's chemically identical to traditional LPG, allowing it to be used seamlessly within existing LPG infrastructure without modifications. This compatibility makes bio-LPG a practical solution for decarbonizing energy use in off-grid areas, providing a cleaner option for heating, cooking, and industrial processes. Renewable dimethyl ether, or RDME, is another sustainable fuel that can be produced from various renewable feedstocks, including waste streams and residues. It can be used directly in boilers, burners, or engines, or blended with LPG up to 12%, without the need for any changes to existing appliances. And this flexibility makes RDME a seamless solution for decarbonizing the industry, especially off-grid areas where traditional energy sources might be limited. Both bio-LPG and RDME play a crucial role in providing sustainable energy solutions for off-grid communities, aligning with EU renewable energy goals and supporting a just energy transition. So what are the challenges and opportunities of the Green Deal? The Fit for 55 package presents challenges for liquid gas sector, particularly in meeting stricter climate energy taxation targets. Another significant challenge lies in ensuring the benefits of liquid gases are fully known and understood, as their versatility and environmental advantages are often overlooked. These factors require the sector to advocate strongly for its role in the energy transition. At the same time, the unique features of liquid gases offer significant opportunities. Bio-LPG and renewable DME are low carbon and low emission fuels that help reduce air pollution and CO2 emissions compared to traditional fossil fuels. They can be produced domestically within Europe, enhancing energy security and reducing dependence on external energy sources. Additionally, their compatibility with the existing LPG infrastructure ensures a seamless, cost-effective transition for rural and off-grid communities. Liquid gas is a reliable energy source for heating, cooking, and industrial processes, particularly in areas where electrification is not viable. By focusing on those advantages and securing strong EU and national government support, the liquid gas sector can play a pivotal role in achieving EU climate goals while ensuring a sustainable, secure, and inclusive energy transition.
And this is where I come in. I'll be presenting very quickly on the current state of the European Parliament and also on the European Commission. So without any further ado, since we've had a very busy couple of months, if not a couple of weeks now as well, with the European Parliament and with the European Commission, what we've seen is going to be quite relevant for the coming years as well, seeing that we are now moving from 2024 to 2029. To give a quick overview on the European Parliament, I wanted to start out with giving some of you a quick explanation on the way things work with the top three institutions. I'm sure for some of you, this is already something that you know, but for others, it might not be. What's important to remember is that the three institutions, the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council of the European Union, are all co-legislators. So all three of them should in some way have equal footing when it comes to shaping and adopting EU legislation. What we've seen in previous years is that the Parliament has been growing in terms of its strength in the overall process, but in some instances this can be debated. So what we've now seen for the current Commission and the goals that are being set is that the latest issues, the latest things that the Commission is going for is to make sure that as many of the current commissioners are involved with the goings on in the European Parliament, and that they're always in on plenary debates, committee meetings, and in the trilogues as well. Additionally to this, one thing that might be worrying is the way that over time, as we've seen now with the Commission hearings, there's a chance for the Parliament to kind of fade out of its relevance. It's something that we're seeing now in the overall political debate, but I wouldn't say that this is really a reality. I doubt that it's really going to end up being a situation where it's just the Council and the Commission speaking to each other. But obviously, with more national politics coming into European politics, this is obviously a risk that a lot of people will be keeping an eye on. But more importantly now is what we've seen with the new European Parliament. So what you see is the former European Parliament from 2019 to 2024. It's a site that you should all be somewhat familiar with. And if you compare it to what we have for this legislative term, as you can see from a top-down perspective, it doesn't look that different. And in reality, that is because there isn't much of a difference, apart from more seats in total, but also the fact that you see some new European political groups in the overall stage. The main takeaways really are the fact that the European People's Party has consolidated its power. Yes, there are larger groups in the right, but this has much more to do with the fact that the Greens and Renew Europe have decreased in size, not to have to do really with much of a, let's say, dramatic spurt towards the right. And with this, we also see something very important, which is the fact that there is no real consistency in terms of the voting patterns across member states, because in the end of the day, a lot of member states have been voting along the lines of national politics. One way to see this is by looking at how some of the member states voted in the end. As you can see, there's no real trend. Some member states voted predominantly for the EPP, while others predominantly for S&D or ECR. Again, this all depends on the way national politics has been going. Now, there is a valid argument to be made, or a valid concern to be made, that a lot of this nationalizing or national politics coming into European legislation might make it so that there's a larger shift towards contemporary issues just in those countries. But in the end, I do see that there's a bit more of a trend of having European issues really as relevant as possible on a European scale, not necessarily just looking at national politics. Now, looking into the Parliament itself, specifically on the way its links between energy, climate policy, and competitiveness. One thing I'd like to start out with immediately is the fact that a lot of what we might see in terms of the strategic interests of the European Parliament are going to be driven by the interests of the individual political groups. So what's important to note is that, yes, while we have a large European People's Party, a large EPP, what we do also have is a more interesting is more interest in what is going on the level of the interests of political groups. So starting out, one thing we've seen is that now there is a little bit of a shift towards looking at energy issues, climate issues, but also very importantly, competitiveness. This is something that has been said quite often, and this is seen quite clearly in the fact that the ITRE committee, the industry committee, and the environment committee are the two biggest and most populated committees in the European Parliament. This has changed a bit from the previous parliament, even though they were still quite large. The fact that these committees have now become so much more significant in terms of its relevance is something to note in terms of its overall interest. We also have highlighted for our sector in particular a couple of other committees that would be interesting. That's the consumer protection, agriculture, transport, and the regional committees. What's also important to remember is that a lot of the MEPs are new, specifically 56% of all MEPs in the European Parliament. The split for the committees is 47% in ENVI and 57% in ITRE. What this means is that really there's a lot of MEPs that have, well, on the one hand, fresh ideas, new insights, but at the same time are not really up to date with everything that is going on a European level. Many of these MEPs are going to have to slowly get into the groove. But as we move on, I think we'll be seeing this developing even more. And again, as we follow the D'Hondt law for determining the sizes of the committees and the representations of the political groups, we've seen obviously that the Christian Democrats, the EPP, are the biggest groupings in ITRE and in ENVI. This means that a lot of what you see on the right-hand side, the quote from the European Parliament President Roberta Metsola on focusing on the single market, on competitiveness, and implementing realistic targets for the industry, these are also the points of view of the Christian Democrats, of the EPP. So we're likely to see them really flowing the charge on the overall policies there. Then if we look at Fit for 55 and what's happened afterwards, there are some key discussion issues that we are likely to see the European Parliament focusing on there. So we've split into 3 different areas for heating, for transport, and overall renewables and affordability. In heating, what we'll likely be seeing is a lot of discussions on technology neutrality and energy security. So what we are probably expecting is not just talk about the implementation of the energy performance of buildings directive, but also on how to ensure that all of this is as technology neutral and as affordable for all consumers as possible. We've also seen now with the new commissioner, Dan Jorgensen, who is responsible for energy and housing, the creation of a new portfolio that will be of quite some relevance for the European Parliament as well. On transport in particular, this will most likely be one of the most divisive issues as we move into the next legislative term, with many of the groups calling for a revision or a review of the internal combustion engine ban, and others saying that we must stick with this as closely to the letter of law as possible. What will happen remains to be seen, but nevertheless, what is quite obvious is that this is going to be an issue that the European Commission will also be very interested in, and therefore there'll be a lot of discussions between the European Parliament and the Commission on this. Whether we expect a revision or a review, that remains to be seen. And the final aspect on transport is obviously on competitiveness, specifically on the EV market, as we've seen quite a bit on the Chinese EV probes, that when it comes specifically to the European competitiveness compared to external actors, transport is an area where this will definitely be one of the key points of view there. And finally, when it comes to renewables and affordability, what's quite important to note is the fact that in the end, we're going to need, or the European Parliament is going to need to look at how the Green Deal is going to impact consumers. And as we move along from 24 to 29, we'll be seeing quite a bit in terms of discussions on how it moves along there. Finally, about the European Parliament, just to note that Liquid Gas Europe has been deeply involved on this from the beginning. We've been doing what we can in terms of getting our messages across and aligning as much as possible with the overall political narrative as we move on. So in our manifesto, one thing to note is that we've definitely positioned ourselves there to call for a just transition, and ensuring that Europe remains competitive also. And these are topics that the European Parliament is very much interested in, and that we're also very interested in following. Then next up is the European Commission, and many of us would have been watching the most recent vote that just happened today at 12 o'clock, where we finally have gotten the approval of the new European Commission, which will be taking office on December 1st. So there's a lot for us to dissect there, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us will be looking at this over the next coming weeks. But before we do that, let's look at where we started out. From this slide, really, what I want you to take away with is the fact that it's a highly complex environment with many different commissioners, or it was a very complex environment with many different commissioners in different areas. And the main takeaway here is that in order to get any energy legislation through or climate legislation through, a lot of different directorate generals have been involved from the start, which makes our life quite difficult to follow how things are moving, but also in terms of an outsider looking in, it's never very clear who's responsible for what and who is calling the shots in the European Commission. Sadly, I'm going to have to say that as we move on into the next commission, that's not likely to change. I've already been seeing the nickname of the current commission as the Spaghetti Commission, seeing that a lot of the different portfolios are being jumbled up, and there's a lot of crossing between what some of the commissioners are responsible for. This, with just these four that I've highlighted, is already quite obvious. The Executive Vice President for Clean, Just and Competitive Transition, Teresa Ribera. Then we have the Commissioner for Climate, Net Zero and Clean Growth, Volker Hoekstra. Commissioner for Energy and Housing, Dan Jorgensen. And Commissioner for Sustainable Transport and Tourism, Apostolos Tzitzikostas. And I'm sure you can already see that some of the portfolios don't match with the first half of their portfolio description. And yeah, you can try to debate why that is, what the intention behind it is. But really, what's the takeaway here is that we've seen that the European Commission is really sticking to its guns while still making sure that a lot of commissioners are involved in as many areas as possible. Specifically on the Clean Industrial Deal, which is a hot topic now, we've seen that all four of these commissioners are going to be responsible for it in one way or another. And I'm sure we'll see that many other DGs are going to jump in, and many different areas are going to be jumping in on this. But one takeaway here is that the Commission and Commissioner President von der Leyen intends on staying the course. Now, what does staying the course really mean? It's difficult to say now exactly what we can expect to see, but what is clear is that even though the intention is to stay the course, we will see some sort of progression towards a new approach to the European Green Deal. Not a U-turn, but at least a new approach in the form of the Clean Industrial Deal. The information that we've been able to discern from the mission statements and the political guidelines suggests that one thing is going to be very important, that is technology neutrality, followed very closely by competitiveness. Afterwards, we see some issues on security of supply, and obviously also on reaching that 90% emissions reduction target for 2040. There is a lot that will need to be done there, but in the end, really, what can be understood with this Clean Industrial Deal is taking the European Green Deal and making this an attractive business opportunity for European businesses, rather than making it a target that they need to accomplish. It's something that they will want to accomplish. And that is something that we need to see over the coming months. Looking specifically at our industry, as I said, it's difficult to really dissect what these Clean Industrial Deal will be, but you can always go back to the three main points of European energy and climate policy. That is security of supply, sustainability, and competitiveness. For our sector in particular, what we're assuming to see in terms of security of supply is, and also with competitiveness, but mainly with security of supply, is making sure that we have homegrown renewables and raw materials that we can get very easy access to. The Commission is probably not going to put all of its eggs in one basket and therefore be diversifying as much as it can. And this is where we can possibly see some aspect of technology neutrality and more energy vectors being used. Secondly, on sustainability, this has always been one of the key points of the Commission and is likely not going to change. This means obviously electrification where possible, but also wherever renewable fuels and renewable gases are used, that they are sustainable. And this is something that we're likely to see continue with the European Commission as we move forward. And finally, the last and probably most important aspect of the CID is competitiveness. We've seen since the Draghi report that this has been the main talk of the town. And here, homegrown technologies where Europe can really leverage a competitive advantage and efficiently invest will be prioritized. And here we'll also be seeing a lot of discussion about deindustrialization and preventing any obstacles and making sure that businesses recognize that the green transition is an attractive thing for them to get into. Last bit on the Commission is somewhat related to the member states. And this is particularly on implementation. So apart from staying the course, the Commission has said, and specifically Commission President has said, that implementation is going to be one of the main focus areas for not just achieving the framework of 2030 and Fit for 55, but also to achieve net zero by 2050. What's interesting to note is that Commission President von der Leyen also said that they'd like to achieve this in the simplest, fairest, and most cost-efficient way. Simplest, fairest, and cost-efficient, this again seems to be heading more towards that competitiveness and sustainability aspects that I was mentioning before. But nevertheless, what's important to note is that member states really have a big ask on their shoulders. There's a lot that they need to implement, not just from Fit for 55, but from whatever may be coming along the lines as well. So if you see the map, what's important to note is the fact that we have many different political alliances, political affiliations for the governments in Europe. This means that on the one hand, there's probably going to be some discrepancy in terms of the implementation across member states. But at the same time, since we've been having elections left, right, and center this year and probably next year, there's going to be an instance where the current government is not the same government that negotiated the existing European legislation. So they will be implementing legislations that were agreed upon by previous governments that they may themselves have disagreed with. And this is going to be a challenge moving on in different member states. Apart from that, another important thing to note is the fact that the European Commission is going to be looking at this very closely and most likely not standing idly by. So just as a quick note is the fact that the European Commission has used secondary legislation as one main tool up their arsenal. Secondary legislation is unlike directives and regulations. These are delegated acts, implementing acts, guidance documents, and technical directives that are not part of the ordinary legislative procedure, and therefore the Council and the European Parliament don't have much of a say. So the Commission here really has a lot of power, and they can implement these secondary legislations to make sure that the overall implementation on a member state level is done along the lines of the original directive and regulation. And we've seen that over the previous legislative term, for the example of environmental legislation, 99% of all of that was agreed upon through secondary legislation. So it's a massive tool that can be used, and one that I'm quite sure the Commission will be keeping up its sleeve just when it needs it. So looking forward, this is likely to be something that will be getting a bit more attention as we go along. And to give you a little bit of a perspective on what's coming for member states, this is just a selection of some of the legislation that we found to be interesting and relevant for the liquid gas sector. But obviously, there's far more from Fit for 55 and the European Green Deal. But as you can already see, there's many deadlines upcoming. There's a lot of goals and targets that they are going to have to meet. and many things that are going to need to be implemented either next year or in the coming years. This means, quite frankly, member states have their hands full. The amount of targets that are coming their way is probably going to be something that the Commission is looking at very closely to ensure that, yes, on the one hand, there are ambitious targets that need to be met, but at the same time, prioritizing across member states what are the most important things that need to be addressed as soon as possible and today. So as we look towards the next 5 years and we reflect back on the fact that we're going to be implementing quite a bit, but also staying the course, but at the same time rethinking as well, it's you end up thinking to yourself, what exactly is the focus? And as we see over the next 3 months of the new commission, within the first 100 days, I think this is where a lot of these these questions are going to be answered. But at the same time, as we're implementing legislation, it's quite certain that there's going to be some aspects that are going to be reevaluated or at least reconsidered and then touched up upon again, either in this commission or the one afterwards. But with that, we have obviously set up our priorities. We've set up a bit of our strategic areas that we will be looking into and that are relevant for the European liquid gas industry. And I think here I will hand back over to Eva.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Leo. Let me just share my slides. So Liquid Gas Europe has issued earlier this year a manifesto, and our team was to ensure that a just energy transition is possible everywhere and for all. So as Europe accelerates its journey towards climate neutrality, Liquid Gas Europe is dedicated to advancing a sustainable, fair, and inclusive energy transition. Renewable liquid gases such as bioLPG provide an immediate, scalable, and practical solution to decarbonize sectors that are difficult to electrify. These fuels ensure energy security, affordability, and industrial competitiveness, making them a vital component of Europe's climate strategy. Our manifesto identifies the critical areas where renewable liquid gases can have a transformative impact. This includes renewables, and we are advocating for the rapid adoption of renewable liquid gases across the EU to effectively support decarbonization efforts and to achieve climate targets in all sectors. In heating, we are advocating to ensure a just energy transition for rural and off-grid communities by prioritizing accessible and affordable renewable liquid solutions for households without access to the gas grid. In transport, we are promoting renewable liquid gases as a key solution to decarbonize road and maritime transport, enabling sustainable mobility and reducing emissions in critical sectors. In industry, we are facilitating the integration of renewable liquid gases into industrial processes to reduce emissions, improve sustainability, and enhance Europe's industrial competitiveness on the global stage. On sustainable competitiveness, we believe that it's necessary to strike a balance between decarbonization, energy security, and affordability to ensure that Europe remains competitive internationally while meeting its climate objectives. Beyond 2055, well, laying the ground for achieving full climate neutrality by 2050 is key, and it's needed to surpass the targets in the Fit for 55 package. Affordability and carbon pricing. Advocating for fair carbon pricing mechanism that accounts for economic realities, ensuring that energy remains affordable for citizens and businesses throughout the transition. And finally, we also support the outermost regions and islands and supporting tailored renewable energy solutions to address unique energy challenges faced by Europe's remote and outermost regions, and ensuring that no one is left behind in the transition. Together, these priorities highlight the essential role of renewable liquid gases in building a sustainable, competitive, and inclusive Europe. And by leveraging their unique strength, Liquid Gas Europe aims to ensure that the energy transition not only achieves climate neutrality, but also secures reliable energy access for all. With that, we have concluded the part where we are actually referring to the past legislative developments, and I have a pleasure to invite you to our upcoming events. And before we move into Q&A, next week we will continue our webinar series with Building Energy Everywhere webinar, where we will showcase a real-world project at a care home in Leuven, Belgium. And this project integrates bio-LPG and energy efficiency measures to highlight the potential of renewable liquid gas as a low carbon, low emission heating solution. Registrations are still open, and we look forward to your participation. Additionally, if you are interested in learning more about the industry and engaging directly with us and other stakeholders, please join us in Katowice, Poland, on 20 to 22 May for the European Liquid Gas Congress. This event will feature high-level participants from policymakers, industry leaders, and technical experts. Attendees will also have the opportunities to explore exhibition showcasing innovative solutions and technologies from across the liquid gas sector. So we look forward to welcoming you there. We'll move now into the Q&A session, and I would like to ask you to submit your questions via the Q&A chat. We'll try to answer as many of them as possible, and if it's not possible, we will contact you via email afterwards. Thank you very much.
Yeah, looking into the Q&A, I see we already have one question. So specifically, what are the biggest risks and opportunities for the liquid gas sector in the anticipated initiatives of the next commission, such as the Clean Industrial Deal, the Affordable Energy Strategy, and Housing Strategy? If you don't mind, Eva, I think I can go ahead and answer that one. So basically, the thing about the Clean Industrial Deal is that we don't know exactly what is coming our way. There's been a lot that the Commission has promised in the first 100 days apart from that. And yeah, I'm also seeing Affordable Energy Strategy and Housing Strategy. I think all of this is going to be quite interesting to see how they develop. As I said, the fact that we have a Commissioner for Energy and Housing who has said specifically that he will focus on affordability of housing, but also on keeping homes warm and bringing energy prices down. This is something that we'd likely be seeing over the first 100 days in the Commission. So I would say, yes, it's something that's definitely interesting for us. It's definitely something that would likely have an impact. But for the time being, it's not as simple as saying we will be looking more closely at one or the other. Nor do I think that it's particularly obvious that any of these are going to be extremely relevant for the industry. But obviously, these are things that, because we have such little information, it's something that is difficult to really pinpoint right now. And I think also, just to add to that, about not having a lot of information, if you speak to any of the representatives of the Commission, or if you hear them speak in events, it sounds almost as if the DGs themselves also don't know what to expect. Some will give you different answers, others compared to others. And in the end, the only thing that we can be certain of is the fact that there's uncertainty on what's going to happen. But then again, I'm sure as of December 1st, we'll likely start to get a bit more clarity now that the Commission has actually been approved and will be coming into office. And I see there's another question. Eva, would you like to take that one?
Thank you, Leo. So I see here a question. Given the drop in compatibility of BioLPG and RDME with existing infrastructure, what specific policy measures are required to scale up their adoption across Europe while maintaining affordability for consumers? Well, it's a very, very interesting and quite complex question, which we will try to further explain as we are intending to publish a report outlining the possible outlooks for renewable liquid gases. So more details definitely will follow very shortly. But in a nutshell, because the let's say uptake of bioLPGs or any biofuels or any biogases is very much stimulated by the policy landscape, a supportive legislative framework is key. So we would need to ensure that renewable liquid gases are fully recognized within EU and national energy climate policies, and the landscape there is pretty complicated. Definitely, we do need to incentivize the production. We see scaling up the production from the HVO and sustainable aviation fuel now. However, a further financial mechanism, I believe, will be very key, especially for on-purpose production facilities, both for bioLPG and for RDME. I believe that also a more technology-neutral approach for policymaking will be very, very key in this process. That's to maintain a level playing field for where renewable liquid gases are treated as a viable solution alongside other decarbonization technologies and alongside electrification. The research and development funding, definitely that's something we are also looking into, the increasing of EU funding and innovation and renewable scalability of production and technologies, etc. And finally, the consumers' awareness of the product, as not many consumers yet are aware of bioLPG and the benefits, the environmental, the CO2 reduction benefits that bioLPG is bringing to their homes. I see a question here. Will the presentation slides will be available? And thank you for sharing your email address. We are going to share the presentation after this webinar.
Yeah, and I see there's another.
Oh, I don't
see there's another question as well. How can the liquid gas industry ensure that technology neutral approach to the Green Deal remains a priority in the next European Commission's agenda, particularly in the context of achieving energy security and competitiveness? That's a long question. Let's see, Eva, do you want to go ahead? Should I go ahead? Yeah. So yeah, in the end, on technology neutrality, there's quite a bit that can be said. As I said before, the Commission's priorities for the next year and, well, the Commission's priorities for the Clean Industrial Deal will definitely be seeing the fact that technology neutrality is going to be one of the main topics in this. But on the one hand, the important thing for us as an industry is to constantly be reaching out to stakeholders as well. In terms of recognizing the technology, in terms of recognizing the fuel, it's really important that we're engaging on the one hand with existing stakeholders, but also with policymakers themselves. As I said, ITRE and ENVI are going to be the two most interested committees or the two most populated committees over the coming years. So really, these are the MEPs and the policymakers that are going to be most interested in what we do. And secondly, it's also important to constantly be informing policymakers and stakeholders about the data that we have available about where exactly the industry is going. And this is why also, as Eva mentioned, we're publishing a outlook that will be readily available in the coming few weeks. I'd say one other thing is really about, as I said, there's speaking with stakeholders, but I'd also add to that building alliances with stakeholders as well. So if we as an industry can really show that we are a relevant piece of the puzzle, not just a niche that not many people would have heard about, it's really important that we can leverage these alliances and show that we're really there alongside and that we really do matter to the consumers that use our fuels. But yeah, with that, I think that probably answers that, unless Eva, you have anything you want to add.
No, thank you, Leo. I see that there's another question here. What challenges do you foresee in implementing the Fit for 55 legislative package for the liquid gas sector, and how these can be addressed to ensure a just and efficient energy transition? So we, as Leo mentioned, and I also, I think, briefly mentioned the challenges and opportunities of Fit for 55. The implementation process is very much with member states right now. I think we need to continue advocating. We need to continue speaking to our national governments and to the EU about the benefits of liquid gases. The challenges are in details, as always. So I believe that a close monitoring of this, that's what, among other things, Liquid Gas Europe is doing. The monitoring of the implementation will be key in here. We do have the European frameworks. We now need to make sure that they are translated into the wording that is understandable also for our sector, and it's positive for our sector. So we are here also to help you in navigating the industry through those challenges, and when they occur, we are inviting you to come forward and call us.
Yeah, I might just add also on implementation. It's particularly on a member state level, what's most likely, as I said, what's most likely going to be a concern is the fact that there is a lot to implement. There's a lot of things that need to be done and a lot of areas that not just the industry, or not just this industry, but overall the energy sector is going to have to pay very close attention to. So in the end, I think that we're likely going to see a lot of industries being called up to consultations on a member state level. And here communication is key. As Eva said, communicating and reaching out to the relevant policymakers is really the most important thing to be doing. And there's a lot that can be learned from the way these processes went on a European level. So if you look at how the heating discussion was here in Europe, and then compare that to some of the different member states where they had similar legislations going on at the same time, there's a lot that can be learned on what the main talking points were on a European level and what the main interest areas were then when translated to member states, because we're going from a very broad top-down looking area down into the detail of the individual areas, the individual states, regions, then even households. And this is something that European legislation doesn't really have the capacity of looking down into the minutiae. But in the end, the talking points and the most important political developments, this is where you have a lot of lessons that can be learned on a member state level. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add to that.
With that, we are coming to an end of our webinar. I wanted to thank you all for participating today, and I invite you to join our upcoming webinars and events, and keep tuned because there is a lot of new developments in 2025, and you will hear more from us. Thank you very much and enjoy your afternoon and evening.